Europa FM, pe aceeași frecvență cu tine.
Today we're welcoming Guy Verhofstadt, MEP, leader of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, ALDE in brief, and chief Brexit coordinator of the European Parliament. We've learned today, Mr. Verhofstadt, that Theresa May will be stepping down in 2 weeks' time as Tory leader and consequently as PM. So how will that impact Brexit, the whole Brexit process?
I have no clue about that. I don't know what will be the impact, really. We are still expecting that majority in the House of Commons can approve the withdrawal agreement and the withdrawal bill. And I hope that the new leadership of the Conservative Party, what will be also the new leadership of the British government, can deliver that, can find a majority in the House of Commons to do that. Are
you honestly expecting for that to happen?
I hope that it happens. Otherwise, we will have a huge, difficult situation by the end of October. And we need to get rid of this whole discussion about Brexit, because Brexit is really poisoning more and more European politics. We are more talking about Brexit than about the reform and the renewal of the European Union. And that's already 4 years now. So I hope that the new leadership finds a way out. I mean new leadership of the Conservative Party and at the same time of the British government.
Nevertheless, it's very likely a new British Conservative PM, regardless of the name of her or his name, will want to renegotiate the Brexit
Well,
deal.
we will not renegotiate the withdrawal agreement. We have said that already many times, but there is room of maneuver to discuss the political declaration. And the political declaration concerns the future relationship between the European Union and the United Kingdom. And there we are very open. If the new leadership wants to go into the direction of a free trade agreement, we are in agreement. If they want to go into a customs union, we are in agreement. So if they want to go even further into a Norway type deal. Of deal, so that means that Britain continues to be part of the single market, we will not be against this. The problem the last 6-7 months is not the position of the European Union. It is that there is no position from the side of the UK, no position at least in the House of Commons.
Do you see yourself as going on with being chief Brexit coordinator for the European Parliament for whatever
forever,
it takes,
forever
and ever?
No, I hope not. No, I hope not. I hope that we can conclude the fastest as possible, because again, all the energy we are putting in the Brexit negotiations is energy that we cannot use in the renewal and the reform of the European Union. And there is the priority for me, how this European Union will survive in the 21st century, certainly under the pressure also of growing populism and nationalism. And for that, I think that we need to reform it, renew it in a very profound way, and that needs time, that needs energy, and all this time and energy for the moment we are putting in these negotiations with the UK.
Some other stuff,
and that is important, naturally, the Brexit, but that is not certainly not the priority for the European Union. Nevertheless, I always have said that the fact that the UK goes out of the European Union is a failure of the European Union. But that's a reason to conclude the fastest as possible and to try to find a renewal of the European Union that can avoid exits in the future. Because again, the fact Brexit was a failure of the Union, actually.
We're going to get back to that, but let me just ask you for now, how high is the risk, in your opinion, of a no-deal Brexit at this point in time?
Personally, I think that there never will be a majority in the House of Commons to accept a no-deal. They will stop it. That's my firm belief. They did it already in a few votes the last weeks and months, and I'm pretty sure that a majority in the House of Commons will not let it happen.
What would a no-deal Brexit, though? Let's just suppose it does happen. What would that mean for the continent?
For the continent, it means that there will be a border and tariffs between the UK and the EU, and that is very bad for the continent, but that is even better, I should say, for the UK. So, but again, that is. My hope is that it will not happen, and I don't think there is a majority in the House of Commons that will let it happen.
Will the European solidarity in face of Brexit, displayed during these past 2 years, survive this round of elections for the European Parliament? A number of tiny little Nigel Farages are flourishing all over the continent.
Yeah, but now Nigel Farage is not new. He was already there for more than a decade, and he was there with 24 seats in the last European Parliament.
You know
and
him quite well. That's
and
why
he
I'm
will
asking.
he will be there again with more or less 24 seats in the next Parliament. So it is true. Everybody is talking about the rise of nationalism and populism. Even I am talking about the rise of nationalism and populism. But my feeling is that the new element in this European election will be the establishment of a new big pro-European centrist group that will be the alternative not only for populists and nationalists, but will also be the alternative for the deadlock policies of the old-style socialists and the old-style conservatives. Since 1979, these two old-style parties, socialist and conservative, have always got the majority.
The majority, yeah.
And that will disappear this time in this election. And what we will see is the emergence of a new centrist, pro-European political force. That's we, together with Emmanuel Macron and other political parties. Here in Romania is that USR Plus, and we will all work together based on a new platform to reform that European Union. And in my opinion, that will be the main shift in European politics. More important even than the rise of nationalism and populism.
Which sort of takes me back to the previous question. Are you optimistic? Will the European solidarity in face of Brexit survive this round of elections?
I think yes. Well, I think that everybody understands very well in the European Union and in the European institutions that in the light of Brexit, only unity can save us, and that the advantages of the European Union are so important. The single market, the freedom of movement, or corporations that we have. All this is far more important than some people think. Yeah.
Later today, in about 3.5 hours or so, you will be taking part in an electoral meeting of the 2020 Alliance, USR Plus, as you were mentioning. Why?
Why? Because it's the party which we will and we try to work now, already months from now. It's a party who his main program is to defend rule of law here in Romania, to defend also the freedom of expression. We want to fight against corruption. And I think that's a big problem in a number of countries in the European Union, the fight against corruption, or the fact that there is no fight against corruption. And that's the reason why we want to work with USR Plus. And
only with USR Plus?
With USR Plus, yeah.
Them and nobody else. Am I right in assuming you ain't going to be meeting anybody from ALDE Romania?
No, because ALDE Romania, our group has decided that we stop the cooperation with ALDE Romania. and for the simple reason that ALDE Romania, as a part of the government, is approving legislation that is weakening the fight against corruption, that is putting in danger the rule of law, that is serving the personal interest of a number of politicians and not the interest of the citizens. And that's the reason why we stopped a few months ago the cooperation with ALDE Romania. I have tried, I can tell you, in direct contacts with the leadership of ALDE Romania.
Who have you been talking to from ALDE Romania?
With Călin Tăriceanu, naturally, and with his people, and we have tried to change this, saying, look, you cannot stop the fight against corruption or making sanctions against corruption weaker because you are in a coalition with Mr. Dragnea. That is not the way it works in the European Union. And so my fear is that, and I have expressed that directly to the leadership of ALDE Romania, that by blindly following their coalition partner, they are destroying, in fact, liberal values, insight, and liberal principles, rule of law in Romania.
You have openly called for ALDE Romania to be excluded from your group. When will, if ever, that happen?
That will automatically happen next week, because next week the new group
after the elections,
a new group will be created. The new group will be created established on Tuesday.
So there's no place for them in
either.
No, there is any iteration of your political
There is no place
group.
for them, for the simple reason that they don't apply anymore the liberal principles, the liberal values, the rule of law, and that they are preferring to safeguard the personal interest of the socialist leadership, and that is for them apparently more important than the rule of law, the freedom of expression, and certainly the fight against corruption in this country. And that is something that we cannot accept.
There's been no shortage of controversy as regards the judicial reforms in Romania these past two years and a half almost. So several MEPs, yourself included, the European Commission also, have been accused of turning a blind eye to the abuses of the judiciary in Romania. There's an ongoing debate about the secret services collaborating a tad too closely with prosecutors. How do you respond to that?
I have condemned that in my intervention in the European Parliament. I have not only spoken about the fact that it's not a good objective to weaken the fight against corruption, but I have also underlined the two far too important influence of the security services in the functioning of the judiciary. That was one of my points. But it is not because that is happening that you can weaken the fight against corruption. It's you need to do both. You need to guarantee the independence of judiciary towards, for example, the secret services. That's one thing. And on the other hand, to do that, it's not necessary to weaken the fight against corruption. There are two separate objectives, and they are not in contradiction with each other. And what I see that is in Romanian politics, they always mix these two elements. So they use to
put it mildly.
To put it mildly, they use one of these elements to justify their non-action in the other field, and that is not possible. Again, what the European Commission has as complaints made towards Romania is very serious. The European Commission does that not often. They have done it in the case of Kaczynski government in Poland. They have made remarks on Hungary. There are question marks on Czechia, as you know, and they do it in a very substantive way towards Romania. And what I think then, if such remarks are coming from the European Commission, I should take them seriously and not say, oh no, that is political motivated, that is against Romania. It's not against Romania, it's defending the rule of law and the fight against corruption in Romania, and that is in the interest of the Romanian citizens. And apparently that's so difficult to explain to a number of politicians in Romania. They always think, oh no, it's against Romania. Nothing to do. I love too much Romania, and I have in the past many times defended the interest of Romania. When we were discussing, for example, years ago, the weight of the votes of Romania, some people wanted to lower the impact of Romania inside the European Union, and I was opposed to that, in saying no, this is an important country, they have a great population, and they need to be respected inside the European Union. So the saying and telling, as some politicians are doing here in Romania, oh yeah, these are attacks against Romania, that is completely untrue.
But do they have a point when they mention multinational corporations not being investigated by the prosecutors, foreign capital not being subjected to the same kind of scrutiny as local capital, and so on?
For me, everything has to be treated on the same level. And again, it's not by lowering the fight against corruption in Romania that you're going to solve this problem. And mixing all these different types of problems in the country.
To put it some other way, do you think the anti-corruption efforts may have been politically motivated and used towards the political infighting during the past, 10, 12 years in Romania? Is that what ALDE Romania maybe was talking about?
What I'm talking about is the following, that the fight against corruption in Romania, like in every country of the European Union, is absolutely key. We need to continue that, and it is absolutely not a good policy to try to soften that fight against corruption to, in fact, protect personal interest of a number of politicians.
But if memory serves, you've started publicly blasting, criticizing ALDE Romania towards the end of last year.
I did it the first time very openly in the debate with the Romanian Prime Minister. Maybe you remember that.
Yeah.
And so I did it very openly, but I did it also directly towards the leadership of ALDE Romania already more or less a year ago.
I was about to ask because judicial reforms started really early on in 2017. What took you so long?
No, first of all, to know the files, and then many times ALDE Romania promised me that they would solve the problem, that they would change their opinion, and they never did it.
Okay. Some Romanian ALDE MEPs have suggested you'd be willing to, quote, surrender your group, your political MEP group, to Emmanuel Macron in exchange for a future leadership of the European Parliament.
That is completely nonsense. What we are trying to do is to build up a new centrist pro-European group that has one objective, that is to renew and reform the European Union the fastest as possible, and that will be done next week based on the outcome of the elections. And it's true that we work together with Emmanuel Macron, and for the simple reason that there are already many of our MEPs sitting in the political party of and in the political movement of Emmanuel Macron. And that will be a huge change, because again, since 1979, the first election of the European Parliament, there has always been a majority of the old-style socialists and the old-style conservatives, and we want to break this deadlock. We want to break this majority, so to give room and space for a renewal of the European Union, because this European Union, as it works today, will not survive the 21st century. There is a need for reform. We are not capable to tackle the migration crisis, because member states cannot agree on the way forward. We are weak in our neighborhood neighborhoods, and certainly have not to tell that to Romania, because not so far from here there are frozen conflicts in our neighborhood, and we play no role in this. We are not prepared for the next economic and financial crisis, because our governance of our European Union economically is not well done. And then finally, we don't play a role in the digital world of today. They're all American firms, Amazon, Google, Facebook, or Asian companies like Alibaba, who
Huawei.
are. But no Europeans. There are no so we need to create European champions the fastest as possible. That is the in-depth reform we desperately need in Europe, and that's the reason why we make this new group to be as strong as possible, and to have influence, and to make a difference in Europe.
Is this what you mean when you say today the European Union doesn't exist? Because I was about to ask you about several
I'm always saying that because I believe in it. European Union doesn't exist. It's not a union, let's be honest. It's a confederation of nation states, still based on unanimity rule. If there is one country who is opposed against one or other policy, it doesn't happen. That we have seen that many times. That's the reason also why we have still this migration crisis, because the member states cannot agree on the way forward to tackle this migration crisis. And so, in my opinion, we need to establish a real union. And why this union is necessary? Because the world of tomorrow will be completely different. It will be a world already today dominated by whom? By Chinese, by Indians, by Americans, by Russians. And in such a world order, only a united Europe can defend our interest, the interest of our citizens, and our way of life.
To make it perfectly clear, are you talking about renegotiating the treaties?
It could be that at the end it's necessary to do so, yeah. And that is also what the Renaissance, that is the list of Emmanuel Macron, in France has proposed to do so. If it is necessary, we're going to do it, because we cannot continue. Certainly, for example,
under the current treaties, it would seem damn near impossible.
No,
as you were saying.
It's not impossible. We have already changed the treaties many times in the past, but I think what is needed now is a change in certainly in the unanimity rule. That is the main obstacle today for the European Union, the incapacity to decide and to tackle a problem.
You're one of the proponents, the most visible leading proponents of a federal Europe. You've already mentioned that. How will a European superstate, let's say...
It's not a superstate. That is, I'm protesting against the fact that you use the word superstate. It's the opposite of a superstate. A federal state is not a superstate. In a superstate is something different. That is a centralistic state in which the center, that can be Paris, for example, in France, is deciding on everything. On everything. In a federal state, that's not the case. In a federal state, you decide on the level that is most appropriate. So if you can develop a policy on the local level, you do it on the local level. If it is better to do it on the regional level, you do it on the regional level. If it is better to do it on the national level, you do it on the national level. And only these policies where you can create an added value with European cooperation, you do on the European level. Let me give you an example.
I was about to ask you for
defense, army. You know that, I'm pretty sure that people don't know that, but we are more or less spending nearly half of the Americans on military. But we can only do 10% of the operations of the American army. So I don't know if you're a mathematician or not. I'm not a mathematician.
On the contrary.
I also. But I know, and you know, if you spend nearly half of the Americans and you can only do 10 or 15% of the operation of the American army, you're 3-4 times less effective. No? That's not so difficult to understand. Or, for example, another comparison.
How about fiscal policy?
Hey, let me give my second. I give you. I give you first of all my second example. That is with Russia. We spend 3 times more than Russia on military. But I'm not sure that if the Russians are coming this way, through Romania, we're going to stop them. We are not capable to do so. It's the biggest waste of money in modern times in Europe. that is our military expenditures. And so therefore I'm saying let's start with an European defense community and European army. Because there you have added value. Europe is at its best when it can combine the efforts, when it can lower the costs, and when you have a solidarity between the different member states of the Union. And certainly with Trump now in the White House, who is maybe not helping us if it is needed at a certain moment. So that I mean with a European federation. I'm always using the word United States of Europe. I think it's
I've heard you mention that a number of times.
Yeah, but Churchill used it. Victor Hugo has used it in the 19th century. But that is what we need. We are playing no role anymore worldwide. If there is a conflict in Syria and there is a meeting to make peace between brackets in Syria,
and the US and Russia.
It's a meeting between the Russians and the Americans in Europe, in Vienna. That's the way it works. And so we play no role at all. So to regain our authority, to regain our sovereignty, to regain the possibility to defend our way of life and our interests, we need a strong Europe. That's my point, and that has nothing to do with a superstate. Let's not laugh. You know what the budget is of the European Union? You know it, 1%. You know that the budget of the European Union is more or less the budget of Belgium. So let's not laugh and say it's a superstate. So, a superstate with the budget of a small country.
Shall we rephrase then? In an European federal state, in an United States.
So now you don't use the word superstate. Thank you.
In an United States of Europe, a future United States of Europe, how will this whole construction work when there's 31 million people who live at this point in time in severe material deprivation? That's the 7th largest member state if they got together.
Yeah, by having a more flourishing economy, by being leaders in the digital economy with our own companies, not American Amazons and Googles, but European Amazon, Googles, Facebook, by having also a new industry in the ecological transformation of our continent. Why not creating a European champion in battery or on hydrogen engines or in environmental meat, for example? All this will be the new world order of tomorrow.
Which sort of takes me back to a previous question. Why not a common fiscal policy?
A common fiscal policy. I'm in favor for certainly a common fiscal policy as a basis. I'm a liberal. At the end, I think that member states can decide on what is the rate, what is the tax burden that they want to put on their companies. But the basis should be the same. We should have the same definition of what profits are that have to be taxed. And what is important in this, that is that we are taxing the big monopolistic, mostly American companies at the same rate as our smaller companies. For the moment, it are our smaller companies who are paying the bill, and not these big internet giants who are paying maybe half, no, I think if even less, 1/3 of what smaller companies are paying. So for me, such a tax policy is not to take away the autonomy of the member states to decide on the rates, but at least that we have the same definition in every of all member states, and that we have at least big companies paying the same taxation as smaller companies.
I was thinking along the lines of what we've found out in the Panama Papers, in the LuxLeaks, and so on. There are still pockets of fiscal evasion all over the continent.
Yeah, but they're not only evasion, it's also inside the continent where you have these differences between big companies not paying taxes and small companies paying taxes. That has to be solved. And so I'm not against the fact, on the contrary, I should make tax policy a part of the European priorities.
Could this explain, do you think, the current populist backlash? 31 million people in poverty,
but
the big,
really big
another
way. So what
getting
populists
tax
then are
breaks.
proposing is also to limit the labor mobility inside the union. Say,
That's
we
true.
don't. That is what they are saying. What is crazy, because there are 3 million vacancies. On the one hand, we have millions of young people who have no job, and at the same time, we have millions of vacancies in Europe. And that is because there is a lack of labor mobility inside the European Union. And that this labor mobility is already low, and our populists and nationalists want to make it even lower than today. They don't want that people from another country, from Romania, for example, are coming to work in Western Europe. They don't want it. They are criticizing it. I think it's the stupidity, because Europe is not only a single market for goods and services, it's mainly also one community for citizens, for labor force, where there is the possibility for people, if they don't find work here, to go to another country where there is some work. And I said it already, there are 3 million vacancies in Europe for the moment. And that is an enormous loss of wealth in the Union, the fact that there are 3 million open vacancies.
On the other hand, AI is about to be making, probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs obsolete in the not so near future.
And at the same time, this same artificial intelligence will create a multitude of jobs. So it's not true that progress or innovation is destroying jobs. They are destroying a number of jobs, but at the same time, they are creating a multitude of new jobs.
But
and at the end,
these circumstances,
but it are not the same jobs. That's the point. So we need to educate our people. We need to make it possible that in your lifetime you have not one job. Not only once a journalist and ever a journalist, I should say, but that you have different jobs in your lifetime. That will be the future. And
you're
so
a former budget minister, and I was wondering, how do you see notions as wages or working hours evolve under this type of circumstances?
I think that there will be less, maybe in certain professions. In others, it will be less rigid. I think that in the modern economy, flexibility is key. Flexibility, that means that you have.
That means a number of times 0-hour contracts.
No, I'm not.
That means working from dawn till midnight.
No. I'm against 0-hour contracts. I think that we need always a basic security for our labor force, so that they know what they get as an income, they know their rights, they know their duties. So
European minimum wage, is that what you mean?
I am more for a European minimum income. What is the difference with the wage? Because the wage is what you gain when you work, and income is in fact more general and is applicable.
It's whatever
also,
you can amass. Yeah.
If you have a job or not a job, that is minimum income is guaranteed. But I think that there is a need to have also minimum social standards on the European level. Europe will never be popular if Europe doesn't also decide works on these minimum social standards.
Finally, supposing you'd get to be European Commission President after these elections, we're just supposing, as for the time being, what would be the first 3 strategic decisions you'd be taking to the European Council?
I should say to them, let's stop unanimity, because then we can speed up our decisions. Secondly, let's make a smaller commission. Let's make not a European Commission of 28, but a small European government of 12, 15 people. And then my third point will be the fastest as possible, be ready economically with investment for a new period of growth that can create jobs also to these 31 million people who you have talked about.
Guy Verhofstadt, thank you very much.
Europa FM, pe aceeași frecvență cu tine.